right, welcome everybody. It's so great to have you here with us today on this Wednesday afternoon. At least in Raleigh, it's beautiful and sunny, a little cooler, but it's nice to see the sunshine. I am Nancy Mangum, and I am the Associate Director of Professional Learning for the at the Frady Institute. And I'm glad to be joined today by my friend and colleague, Darren Hudgens. And Darren is joining us from Portland, Oregon. It's wonderful to be able to offer opportunities like this for educators across North Carolina and some even beyond North Carolina as we work with the Department of Public Instruction to offer these to educators during this crazy time of remote learning, which is it, I think maybe the craziest thing is it's kind of beginning to seem like, okay, we're getting the hang of this, at least, you know, I guess somewhat. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Darren and let him introduce himself a little bit more, and we will get started here. We will use the chat feature. Darren will ask you to maybe share if you have ideas or share thoughts in the chat. We will leave you on mute. I think for most of the day, we do have a large number of us joining, but please feel free to use that chat to share resources. You all are great. Have lots of great things happening and great things that you all are doing and sharing with your students. And so let's use that chat to continue that conversation. And Darren might even ask us to respond to a couple questions today too. So Darren, it's all yours.
Hey, thank you so much, Nancy. I really appreciate it. Thanks for all of you for being here today. It's just, it's a real pleasure. I got to do this webinar last week. And so you're getting the second version, which is always, I hope, well, I think it's always better because you get to iterate and get feedback and all those things. I know you're getting that from all of your teaching right now, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous, depending on your situation. But I'm really excited to be here, and I'm just going to kind of jump right in. Nancy mentioned to you where I was from, and so what I want to ask you to respond to in the chat is when you hear Oregon, what do you think about? And if you could put that into the chat, that would be fantastic.
Lots of great things. Socialism, ducks in the rain, hiking, beautiful, cool mascot, a lot of mountains, Lewis and Clark, Eugene, Portland, or the Oregon Trail. People are saying Portland is cool. People are saying near the Pacific Ocean. Somebody's talking about specific people. Somebody even is saying Frasier. Was Frasier filmed in Oregon? Or, I mean, did it take place in Oregon?
I don't think so. I don't remember. So maybe, and I do remember watching Frasier, but I don't remember. I know there's some connection there.
Yeah. Okay.
Somebody put in Seattle. Boy, Portland people would be really upset with that person right now. That's we're the stepchild to Seattle, supposedly. No, that's funny. It is West Coast.
Yeah, somebody said Three Sisters. I've actually seen the Three Sisters, so that's pretty cool.
Excuse me.
Oh, Frasier was in Seattle, somebody said. But you know, it's kind of still that Pacific Northwest.
Yes. You guys, I mean, you're all just like South Carolina as far as I know. So, I mean, that's...
They're at the bottom. If you like go over it, there should be something.
Somebody has their mute on, or they're unmuted. There we go. All right, we got it. Well, this is super. This is exactly what I was hoping for. I already pushed the button.
Uh-oh.
They're firing up. They're giving me North Carolina exclamation point. That's funny. I know, I don't think everybody here is from North Carolina, but I did jazz you folks a little bit. I have been out your way many times, thanks to the Frady Institute, Nancy, NC Ties, a bunch of people, wonderful people out there. So I love North Carolina. I'm going to lead you to the next thing. However, though, I want you to tell me, what do you think I see outside my window right now? Based on your thoughts of Oregon, what do you think I see out my window right now?
A lot of trees, plants, skies, your neighbors, flowers, sunshine. Somebody said Mount Hood.
Good.
Rocks,
And
plants.
some people have been out here then. I'm liking this. This is great.
Or they know their geography, Darren.
Or they know their geography, which the social studies teacher in me gets really excited about that. I think the statistic is somewhere around most people don't leave 35 miles from where they were born or something like that. So it's wonderful to see that we have a lot of folks that have studied some geography or gotten out and seen a bunch of things. Neighborhood, like that. Well, this is great. Your a lot of you got it right. I have definitely seen trees, but one of the things that I'm seeing is a lot of rain today. Last week when I did this, I got to razz North Carolina a little bit because we had Carolina blue skies. Today is more typical Oregon spring weather, and it is pouring down rain. So some of you got that right. I also see my neighborhood. But mostly right now I'm looking at trees that the leaves are just kind of popping out, and we're seeing a bunch of flowers all over the place. So the third part of this exercise, I want to just kind of dive in, is this think, see, wonder thing, is to get, to begin to process, kind of get to know me a little bit, think about where I'm from, all those kinds of things. But the last part would be something about, well, what do you wonder? And so I'm going to, alter this exercise a little bit and tell you a little bit about me to fill in that wonder. I taught secondary school for about 11 years. I taught both social studies. We called it vocational ed at the time. Now it's CTE, social service education and law. I got to build all kinds of real fun, interesting projects, both face-to-face and some online. I then have worked for an organization that was a educational technology nonprofit for a long time. So I ran a lot of events, have done workshops, keynotes, all those types of things. I see myself as a professional curator. And what I mean by that is I like to surround myself with really smart, excellent educators and school leaders. And then I like to share them with everybody that I come in contact with. And so it's a lot of fun. My third kind of, I guess we'll call it the third part of my career, is now running a company called Think, Do, Thrive. And I wrote that, or I named it that because in every workshop that I do, I try to make people think. I try to make sure we do stuff. And then I'm hoping when you leave, you then thrive with the people that you meet. This is how you get a hold of me. Obviously, you could also talk to Nancy. She would be able to contact you as well. I do a newsletter from time to time. I do things on Twitter, all kinds of different things. So wonderful to be here. I'm excited. Hopefully I filled some of the wonder of what this is. You guys did a fantastic job of not only knowing the Pacific Northwest, but also building a lot of the stereotypes. I get told every once in a while when I visit that, ask if I live in a teepee or a log cabin or still walk around barefoot. And so I always find that to be comical. But that's how we learn, and that's how we see the world. And it's wonderful to do that. And your children are certainly doing that as well. My goal today is to make sure that I get you at least 2 to 3 resources or strategies that you can use in this kind of new world that we're in, whether that is synchronous or asynchronous. I know some of you folks are done for the school year, meaning you're not going to go back to a physical space, or at least that's what the message is now. I know a lot of you on this chat, it's actually, I think I want to say May 15th is a target point. And so maybe you'll be getting to come back with your students. But I'm looking at it kind of from this hybrid. No matter what you're doing, you can fill in the gaps between either one of these spaces. And to that note, we had kind of everything in a row. We had our crayons in a row. Everything was set up. School structures have been there for a long time. You had your building culture built. You were, more than, you're probably about 3/4 of the way through the year, somewhere in there. Everything was going along. You're getting to learn your kids. And then, as we know, this pandemic hit, and it has melted away and blurred the lines of all kinds of things. And so in lots of times of crisis, and this workshop is geared primarily for middle to high school, although if you're in primary, I certainly think you can get some strategies. The Think, See, Wonder that I did to start this is certainly something I'm sure you've heard of or can use with your students. But in my experience in that middle school to secondary is a lot of times when things would change, when edicts would be put out, one of the responses that several folks would say is, if they didn't like what was being said, is I'm just going to go in my room and take care of what I can take care of. I'm the king of my classroom, that kind of thing. I'm not going to say they were putting their head in the sand, but the processing of what to do with all these things was a little bit of a difficult, and you have a way to kind of get away. Whereas a primary school teacher who has the kids all the time and all the subjects, it's a little harder to do. And so in this particular case with this pandemic, it's not that easy. You can't stick your head in the sand and say, I'm going to take care of what I can, because you've got all kinds of kids needing all kinds of things from you, both from a content standpoint, but also from a social emotional standpoint. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through these, because I think over the last 3 to 4 weeks, I think you've been probably having to restructure lots of norms and expectations. And if you haven't, I hope you sure spent some time thinking about how can I communicate to my parents, my teachers, and my students. How do we chunk our day? It is different than in that face-to-face environment, and I think you all are experiencing that. Reimagining what those days look like. And then finally, where we all have kind of hit, whether you were really advanced in it from a technology standpoint to a real novice, is this whole, what do we do from a digital device? How do we give access to all of our students and all that? And then once you hit that, if you haven't yet, it's certainly coming. Then we start to run into kind of the other side, there's the art and science of teaching, and that is this whole, how do we do it with people's needs? School for a lot of folks was a safe haven. It was a place that they could come and get structure, get people to support them in all their needs, socially and emotionally. But now that that's not there, how do we find those particular areas? And so I know you've been working on equity. I hope you've been spending a lot of time thinking about the social emotional pieces, which is there were life challenges when they were in school. Now that everybody is at home together, or we have people losing jobs, I mean, all kinds of things, you can imagine that the life challenges have been exacerbated. And then I'm going to talk about a little bit later, but certainly the media has played a large role in this, both for good and bad. And that has certainly played a role in heightening or lowering people's anxiety levels. And I know you've been dealing with all this, but I wanted to kind of bring it up. If you haven't been addressing some of these things, you certainly is something that's important to do so. To set up the basis for this session, though, I wanted to introduce you to a gentleman by the name of Trevor Bryan. He's an art and English teacher in New Jersey. And he posted something several weeks, I think he's posted actually a couple times, but it came across my window about coloring with his students. And what he did was set up an environment for them to have time to color, but to also learn a set of goals that an artist would use. And you'll see at the top of the screen, this is a statement that he kind of uses to set this thing up about coloring inside the lines and making choices and ideas. And I think most of you are probably reading through it right now. But when I was thinking about this workshop and I saw his coloring goals, I was like, this is exactly what we are dealing with now. And so I wanted to use his structure of coloring goals to set us up for this workshop with both strategies. I also have heard that he has written a book that both combines art with reading strategies. I've heard it's excellent. I have not read it, but I've been told by several people that it is. So you should definitely give Trevor a shout out and look at his work. And in order to give you some context of what I mean by those goals is he wanted them, as they were practicing, to think about these types of strategies. And so the first two I'm not going to spend a boatload of time on, because I think this is what we are spending all of our time with right now, is this: how do we give that structure of coloring within the lines and doing what we need to do as teachers and school leaders. But then also we have this new opportunity of that they get to color outside the lines, whether you did that in your classroom or not, but just because they're physically in a different space and school looks differently. So I'm going to start with those two, and then we'll work our way through these particular goals, and hopefully you'll understand where I'm going from that. The first one is this whole coloring inside the lines. There's always advantages to that. And I've kind of led to that before, which is this: coloring inside the lines for some is the most important thing, because it gives them that school structure. It oftentimes gives us a curriculum. So if you're thinking of a textbook, or you're thinking of your standards, those kinds of things, it sets all that up ahead of time, not just for the teacher, but often to deliver it to the parents, to deliver it to the students. And what I want you to think about in this particular thing, and I'm going to actually put it into the chat, is our brain is kind of set up into these two systems. Over the last couple of weeks, which system do you think you've been living in the most? I'll give you a little bit of time to kind of read through the two systems. Because of the pandemic, because of the change in school, which system do you think you've been living in the most?
Looks like, Darren, we're kind of split between one and
Yeah.
a lot of.
Which is actually really cool to see this progression, because last week, I think we said it was probably about 75% more ones, maybe a little bit higher. And I know you're all different people and all those kinds of things, but this is actually, and it's not a right or wrong answer. It's just interesting to see. And of course, once I started bringing up this, you can see there's a bunch of twos that fired up. And so it's interesting. Go ahead, Nancy. Sorry.
Oh, I just said a lot of boths.
Yeah, I think it's 50-50, which is fantastic. The reason I wanted to show you this is typically we spend the majority of the time, 95% of the time, in that system one. And the system one is set up to make fast decisions, right? If you think of brushing your teeth, when you first had to learn, you thought a lot about it. Now you don't think about brushing your teeth or tying your shoes or folding your hands, any of those kinds of things. System one's set up to allow that to happen, so the brain doesn't have to process everything. In most parts, for most of you, again, I'm not talking about new folks or people in trauma, those kinds of things, but for most of you, this coloring inside the lines was set up with school. And when COVID hit, we all were fired up in system one like no tomorrow. We're trying to make decisions. How do we do this? What do we do in a state of in a state of emergency with both family and students? The second component, though, is what I'm going to try to encourage you to spend more time and continue to do. And it looks like you guys are already doing a wonderful job of processing, is how do we take what we've learned from that face-to-face environment, and then how do we tweak it? Because you can't do the same thing online. You can't do the same thing with home packets. You can't do the same thing with people who don't have internet. How do you balance and make these conscious decisions? Because coloring inside the lines is important. It's not the only, and there's lots of people that love to live in just this one, It's super important. So that leads me to the second one. And the second one is where a lot of teachers get either they love it or they get really nervous. We can't let our kids color outside the lines. We can't color outside the lines. But there are advantages to that. In this particular case, having no brick and mortar, you are being forced to color outside the lines because we hadn't all planned for this. Again, I'm not talking about everyone, but coloring outside the lines allows us to bring in some of these current events that your students are worried about, that your students' parents are worried about. Allows us to actually address some of that, work on some of those social emotional needs. And then finally, it gives us this type of environment that allows us to deal with these soft skills that businesses, that folks that talk about the future, the most important skills that our students can learn. Yes, they have to, literacy is extremely important. Understanding math concepts and math is really important, but they also need to be able to, do the 5 C's. They need to be able to communicate and show ability to have creativity, critically think, collaboration, and curation. And this gives us an opportunity to really foster those. Again, what I tried to do is a little bit of that right at the beginning. But as we go through some of these resources and strategies, I'm hoping you will find opportunities to be able to do these. And as I said, I was going to go fairly quickly between the first 2 goals because I think you understand the concept of coloring within and with outside the lines. One thing that I want to challenge you with, which is it tends to be coloring heavily outside the lines, is I get to travel around a lot, and I get to go to many schools, and I get to talk to many administrators and teachers, and primarily or overwhelmingly, most schools are banning mobile phones. And I think it is a missed opportunity because we know that students are spending a large amount of time on those devices, and yet they are getting limited to no instruction on understanding the difference, for example, between fact and fiction on those phones, understanding the difference between, we go back to those, how do you communicate properly? How do you curate things on a phone? It looks different than on a desktop. How do you critically think the things that you are receiving from other people? And I think we're doing a real disservice. So this is kind of one of those important things for me. And so I want to continue to bring it up that these are not going away. We cannot hide from them. I think I'll bring it up later, but I'm going to do it now. YouTube is now the second most used search engine. Kids are watching enormous amounts of videos. And again, how are we helping them in that process? And if we're not teaching them things, they're going to find it in other places. And I know many of you on this webinar have used YouTube to learn how to do a lot of different things. So I want to encourage you, again, thinking about that outside the lines. How can you use these devices to help you with kids? Last but not least, on my high horse is, you may say this is an equity issue, that some kids don't have phones, and that is true. But if you look, majority of kids either have a phone now, or they have access to several phones somewhere within your family. This crosses socioeconomic lines. For those of you who grew up in the 80s, this was a huge sociological conversation about, and I will bring this up because he was a Tar Heel, but Michael Jordan's shoes. There were many kids who could not afford those shoes, but somehow they were able to get those shoes because it was a status thing. Phones have now become that, and it's also a window to the world. So long diatribe, but I wanted to make sure that we really focus on thinking about what could you possibly do with access to these mobile devices that perhaps you haven't done in the past. The third goal for this particular set of goals is this use of patterns. So if we're in this division between inside the lines and outside the lines, how can you use patterns, things that are structured prior, to help you in your space that you're in now, this asynchronous and synchronous. First of all, when you think about advantages, what's the advantages to using patterns? Think of it, one is it's typically a place to start. I can use this structure. The easy one to throw out here, and I will show you this in a second, is like a graphic organizer. Many of you jump to graphic organizers because it gives you a built-in place to start. How can I process information? How can I go through things? And it's a structured place for both you to send kids, but for kids to go. Typically, the graphic organizers are practiced. So it's not just something that you make up off a cuff. These are things people have been using for some time, and they have built them that way. And then it kind of goes to the same thing. They're all also often reviewed, not just by the researchers that build them, but also by the, other educators and other leaders. And so what I want to do here, and of course I clicked the wrong button, so I apologize, is I want to show you the first, oh, and I left this out. I am going to give you a link to these slides at the end of this, so you'll be able to go through and click all of these as you have time to do that. But the first resource that I wanted to show you is this ultimate guide of graphic organizers for teachers. And what I like about it is it's a long list. You can see at the top, you know, of course, they're going to have this graphic language of the ultimate. I'm sure there's other ones out there. But what I really like is this, depending on what you're trying to do with your students, it sets it up in both this writing, reading, teaching, brainstorming kind of format. And as you go down the line, it not only shows you, well, here's the graphic organizer, but it gives you ways in which to set it up step by step, which again, if I'm in a, what do I do with kids? How do I make sense of things? This is one of the ways that you can do that. Here's a great, for example, reading one. It's a story map. You can help them build the story. I'm sure many of you have seen these. So I'm not going to spend a boatload of time on it. This is one of my favorites, the KWL chart. Again, primary folks have probably spent tons of time with these. Secondary, not as much, but they should. And this is a resource that certainly I would recommend that you
and
look
Darren,
at.
I put the link to that in the chat.
Oh, you're super nice. We learned from last week, right? Whoops, I did it again. Let me go back here. I apologize. The second thing that I would like to recommend is a book called Edgy Protocols, and it's actually done by Marlena Hepburn and John Carippo. They put out their first book, and now they have even have now a second book that have just come out most recently. It's a wonderful book of all kinds of different strategies and protocols that you can use with kids. The first one obviously did very well, so they made a second one. I'm not going to spend a ton of time again on them, but I would, if you're looking for a book that has a bunch of places to start and great ideas for lessons, both of these books are excellent. It can help, and again, I've linked to them, and maybe Nancy has those in the chat. The third thing, and I would spend my entire workshop on this, but I can't for various reasons. But if you have not looked at a concept called design thinking, I would highly recommend that you take a look. If you just type in design thinking in Google, you will find a million different resources. It primarily came out of the D School and IDEO, D School's out of Stanford, but IDEO is a company kind of connected through them. Nancy always talks about was it David Kelly's book, Creative Confidence, which is also kind of the origin story of this. But it's a wonderful way to get your kids to come up and look for, come up with their own problems or look for other problems and go through a process of trying to get deeper into that. It's focused on humans. It's a human-centered design. It's like human problems rather than computer problems, I guess. Allows them to prototype, get feedback from people, and test that and then continue that process. It's a wonderful way to both with adults and students to learn all kinds of things. And again, it's been it's built into a pattern. So that's those three different resources that I hope you will use, and I think it can really help you. The fourth space is, or excuse me, the fourth goal is called mixing colors. And it is a wonderful also opportunity, even though they're all different and they're shaded differently, it allows you to introduce with your students a bunch of different contexts. So oftentimes we focus on just one thing, and kids are curious about the periphery around things. Allows them to look at things from different perceptions. They may perceive, for example, Oregon to be one thing, but in many cases it has many layers, just like North Carolina or any of our other states. And then it also gets you to find out new passions, new things you might be interested in, because you didn't just stay within one color, you mixed a bunch of different things. And so one of the first resources that I want to take you to, and it's also very similar design thinking. I could probably do this entire thing just in this space. And that is the New York Times has a site that's called the Learning Network. And this particular thing is just packed full of things that you can use. Again, I talked about current events. They have things like lessons for a day, but then they also have all kinds of different things about what you can do with graphics, what you can do with some of the, like here's a picture prompt. Lots of kids are hearing about, well, there's protesting going on. Well, what does that mean? You can set up a prompt and get them to think, see, and wonder. There's student opinion pieces, and you can just see as I scroll down, there's just a boatload of stuff. Yes, Nancy.
And it's not just I mean, I think it's really high quality. So sometimes more isn't better, but
yes.
It's high quality. And you know what, Darren, will you click on one of the picture or what's happening in the picture? Yeah, what's going on in this picture? That yellow icon there with the picture with the camera.
The multimedia one.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely.
And I just want to point out, I love these. If you haven't seen these already, they're great. They could be writing prompts, but they're also just great. You know, Darren talked about the wonder or see, think, wonder. They have pictures as well as graphs. So if you click on the, Darren just clicked on one, it asks students, what do you think's happening here? And they can have a great opportunity to kind of have some dialogue or some writing about what they think is happening there. And then every Thursday, the New York Times reveals what actually was going on in the picture. So it's kind of an interesting thing. You can maybe you use your LMS and you put the picture or the link to this in there, and then you have students respond in the chat there, responding to what they think is happening. And yes, Jessica, it is a free resource. So
yeah, all these are, I mean, with the exception of some of the books that I put in here. I tried to give you a bunch of things. And you can imagine right now, a lot of the things that are on this New York Times has to do with COVID, because that's the current thing, but there are many resources in here that do not. And what I love is not only do they have the graphics, but then as Nancy was talking about down below here, they have a setup of questions for the students. So it's a really wonderful resource of just built-in content that you can use, right now. And so that's one. And again, we could spend all day on that particular one. The second part that I love, and again, I talked to you about being a former social studies teacher, and I didn't know this, it's actually been here for quite some time, but the Google Arts and Culture. And what they have is just again, another treasure trove of resources that you can study all kinds of things depending on what your interest is. And you can see here's, if you're doing, like Earth, space, those kinds of things. here's a bunch of things more for kids, like I Spy, and you can really look closely. There's music and art, as you can imagine, because this is, culture. There's just a boatload playing with art using your phone. So here I am, of course, bringing in some things about how they can use their phone. It's just, you could spend hours again looking through there. If you're studying cultures, there's all kinds of like 360 videos where you can go in and get a real look at what that culture might look at. Just really, really interesting. The other thing I did not know that I was playing around with is in the app itself. You can take a picture of yourself, or get a selfie, and then it will match pieces of art with you, and what you might look like based on these pieces of art. And it's really interesting to kind of see. And of course, that's something you can write about or talk about. Why do they think I look like this person, or who is this person? I found a bunch of people there that I had no idea who they were. Here's one, women in culture, game changing, from NASA. So there's just a boatload of things. I won't spend the time I want to on this, but there's another link I put here on culture, which has a lot to do with propaganda. It actually does an amazing thing of merging propaganda posters from World War II with some of the propaganda that is from both sides being pushed during this, kind of divide politically. And it does a great job of getting folks to talk. So again, if you're teaching government or economics or something like that. And then finally, and I'm really spending a lot of time on mixing colors. For a lot of people struggle with how do I make math relevant rather than just giving them a worksheet of things to go through? How can I take this new environment that they're in and get them curious about math? Dan Meyer is a legend in the math community, but I find more and more, a lot of people don't know about him. He has started something, I think it was almost 2011, which was this third act math tasks. And what he did was he's been building this spreadsheet. He has also gone off and he works for a company called Desmos, which I would also recommend if you're interested in math that you look at. But this particular resource is a spreadsheet, and you can see he's been culling it for some time. And what it does is it puts a particular task of something that is real world. And so I've already clicked on this Coca-Cola pool, and I'm going to use that as the example. And what he does is he posts a video, and act one is to get them to not only watch the video, but then it prompts them with a question. How many bottles of Coca-Cola did they buy to fill up this pool? And so it gets the kids back to this, curiosity thing, like, oh my gosh, they filled up a pool with Coke, and well, like, why would they do that? And all these things. And so it prompts them with this set of questions to get them curious. And then in act two, you begin to give them information that they would need to know to solve it. So you can see here dimensions of a pool, or the different squares on the image. And then what it begins to do is, okay, if they have a 2-liter bottle and they're dumping those in there, like, how many would it take? And so there's so many different angles that you can do. And then finally, after they've done work, they've looked at it, they want to see, well, what is the solution? And so act 3 is about giving them an example. It also shows some student work. And then you can see that over time, people have added in, here are other questions that you could ask them. And you can see there's 87 more questions that have been added. So if you don't like what's there, you can pull in some others. And then of course, people have added all kinds of comments to the bottom. And so I would highly recommend, again, if you're looking for math, these are some real world ones that, might interest you in processing through this. So that's mixing colors, the turbo version. It's the most depth that I'm going to give you in these, just because I think these are 3 resources that, could possibly give you content for, years to come. They're just really rich. So the next goal or strategy is about using value. Value is the idea of less is more, the idea of how do we differentiate for different people, and then using the process of feedback, that maybe I start somewhere, so I'm not very, I don't have a lot of depth, but as I begin to build and scaffold and chunk things, I can get more depth down below, which is kind of that concept of shading, that your kids are going to be in different spaces. And so how can we give them opportunities to do that? There's an older book called The Writing Revolution that has a strategy in there that, I mean, I think there's a bunch in here that I like, but I wanted to just pull one out for time's sake. And it's really about helping students at the primary level build compound sentences, so they will have a thought, and then you would add this because, but, and so at the end, so they begin to get to those higher levels of thinking, those higher levels of bloom. But what I found is oftentimes, because folks have been struggling with their writing, they spend so much time trying to focus on that they never get to those upper levels. So my recommendation is use this because, but, and so, similar to what maybe the 5 whys strategy is. How do you get deeper into their thinking and push them depending on where they are, whether they're at the lower level or the upper level. And so this is a resource I might check out because it's been around a while. I think you can also find a lot of information online from this book, but this particular strategy is something that I would press you to push on a little bit and look at. Probably my favorite one in this particular block or goal of value is giving students opportunities to share the world that they're in. So if you can find the ability for them to do something like a Zoom or a Meet, or use a tool like Seesaw or Flipgrid, we're going to talk about a little bit later, something like that, where they can show their world. You can certainly write about it as well. But a person that I know well, named John Spencer, who puts all kinds of different resources, and I'm going to talk about him later, used to use a strategy with his 8th grade students called show and tell. And most of you go, well, I did show and tell. But this one is a spin on, instead of you going up and showing your item, whatever that item is, and talking about it, this flips it a little bit and gives the student the opportunity to actually write it from the perspective of the object itself. So instead of me narrating this, I don't know, coffee cup or something, you write about from the perspective of the coffee cup. And you come up with all kinds of different concepts. It gets them to work on their writing, gets them to think. Some people go very creative, funny, all types of different things. But one of the things that I love about it is for some kids, it's very stressful as an introvert. And I always say this as an introvert, but I was an extrovert, and I found it very stressful to get in front of the class and talk. But it gives them an opportunity to, when you write about something else, you kind of detach. It's not you're writing from their perspective, and it gives them a real opportunity to maybe share some things that they haven't in the past. And so I just thought it was a neat strategy. I've linked to John's resources that talk about that in this, and you can certainly think about it. The second part is thematically, thinking about things. How can I teach them in themes? This is a great opportunity for you to get together with your other teachers and say, what are some things that we can do together? Hopefully we're already doing that in that brick and mortar space. But if not, this is an opportunity for you to maybe try. As I said, as a former social studies teacher, I would look at this completely differently than when I did then. Then I was in chronological order. Now I would look at things much differently. Yes.
I think we're good, Darren.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought that was you. One of the things I did not link here, but I meant to, and maybe, well, not maybe, I will fix this. The Friday Institute, and I was a part of this at the beginning for sure, has put together a social emotional learning course. And it is a wonderful onboarding, I think, not only for people who new introduction to how do I better teach social emotional learning. It's a great resource for that, but it also has, for those of you who are a little more advanced, there's all kinds of different enrichment projects there. And so I would highly recommend you look at that. I meant to link to this there, but that's another space that you could go that sometimes you think you don't have time for, but kids need that more than ever.
Darren,
And that leads to,
yeah, Darren, I just said, I just put a link in the chat to the, and it is a free course that's taking place now, and it's open through August.
yeah, and they've been opening and closing it over a couple of different times, and I would imagine as it continues to be popular, they will continue to do that. But that leads to this last part. If you do anything in this using value, if I can pull anything out of here, the most important thing is for you to offer office hours for your kids. This is a new opportunity. It's hard to do on a bell schedule. It's hard to do in the structures of one class after another. But you get a real opportunity to listen and understand from your, what are your kids going through? What do they need help on? It's just talking about value. It's maybe the most valuable thing you can do out of all of this. And so I wanted to really make sure I call that out. The next goal is about the direction of stroke. How can you use different techniques to teach things? And there's advantages for this. One is from this whole advocacy space. So how can you give your students opportunities to choose the way that they want to do things or choose their stroke? From thinking about creativity, we oftentimes say, just be creative. Just go out there and be creative. Well, there's a bunch of different ways to be creative. And as we're fostering and enriching those with kids, you get an opportunity to say, we're going to practice this kind of style or this kind of stroke. And you're going to get to see, do you like it? Do you not like it? And so you kind of test it, which is that whole piece of practicing concepts. One of my favorites, it's a perfect tool for advocacy and student choice, comes from Catlin Tucker. I've linked to her blog post for this. And she has set this up in, it doesn't matter what the subject or the topic is. Students go through and they pick what particular questions they want to ask. Now, you as the teacher can, make them answer all of them if you want. But what they really allow for you to do is to make sure that they're answering the critical questions, which is, well, what are they going to do? What do you want them to do? How do you want them? Which stroke or direction are they going to choose based on that list of questions? And then really have to process with you with why they want to do it. So if you're one of those teachers that says, I'm concerned about giving students the opportunity to choose a project or choose an assessment or choose whatever, this is a tool that would give you more structure so you can align it to the process that you want to get back from the student, but also force them to have some ownership in it. And I just think it's very easy, very concise, simple tool if you're thinking about, project-based learning or something like that, which is exactly the next one that I brought up. Project-based learning, I'm going to take it here, is actually by Teach Thought. It's 50 different ideas. So if you're one of those people that thinks, I can't think of the strategies that I want to use, they have done a great job. And this is actually a curated list. It's still running here, so it's a little messy. It will look much better when you click on it, but it has a big giant list of different things that you can get, have students do. Plan a Mars colony using current data in Martian landscape, profitable business. I mean, it's just a real laundry list, very simple to read. For those of you who are struggling, what are resources, or excuse me, what are projects that you want your students to do? And again, why I put it on here was trying to save you time and give you opportunities to get through it. The last but not least, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. I already brought this up. It's now the #2 search engine. Kids are all over YouTube. They love it. If they're not there, they're on TikTok and Snapchat. If you can find ways to get in their space, YouTube very, very quickly has put together a YouTube learning page that again is structured by all kinds of spaces. They break it down both in grade level, but they also do it as through genres, which will help again with that direction of stroke. I'm not going to spend time going through it, but it's certainly a resource that you should check out. You might be able to find some things, or I'm quite sure you'll be able to find some things that work well for you. Scribble. This is the one that scares everybody all the time because they think it's a big, giant waste of time if you just let kids have time to scribble. But actually, we're finding out with all of the sketchnoting things that come out, with all kinds of different art pieces, with understanding the brain better, that there are high advantages to allowing kids to have time to dabble in things. Both higher order thinking, curiosity, allows them to practice. I'm going to give you one resource, one example. I've talked about John Spencer before. He gives 10 different classroom distance lesson activities in here, and they're all excellent. A couple of them I have brought up, but the particular one I wanted to focus on here was this whole concept of a genius hour. What if you gave your students 20% of their time to attack something that they're interested in? This is a concept that I think came out most notably through Google, but a lot of people had been doing it prior, and it's giving their employees just 20% of their time to tinker and try things. Again, you can structure this to fit the needs of your content or your focus area, but you're giving students the choice to make these decisions. And I've been watching this with my own kids. They've been doing it not because their teachers have pushed it, but they've just all of a sudden they're trying all kinds of things, building a biosphere. One of my oldest sons all of a sudden wants to paint everything now, and he never had before. There's just all kinds of things that they're discovering that now this new time zone has shifted. And so John's post is excellent, has some videos, has all kinds of things to kind of explain it for you. I'm not going through scribbling because I don't think it's important. I think it's highly important. I'm going through it really for the process of time, and I want you to be able to dig into that resource on your own time because he's got 10 great activities there. Last but not least, and this is the one that everybody jumps on because they think assessment. But we now have a wonderful opportunity to give kids in the spaces that they're in now a bunch of time to do a bunch of testing. And this whole idea of testing on the back before you put it on a canvas, before you present it to the teacher, we want our kids to do rough drafts. We want our kids to do, test paintings or whatever before they give it, or in a project sense, hey, turn this in, get some feedback. So lots of opportunities for formative assessment, lots of opportunities for kids to, maybe they fail in the summative assessment, but they can show you their process of learning and how they improved through a list of evidence. And testing on the back shows you the evidence that they've tried. Kids being able to see that even if I struggled and didn't meet the end goal, I made progress. It gives them a lot of pride. And then of course they're, getting to decide what they're going to test. And that just makes waves with kids. There's 4 things here I'm going to show you quickly. One of the ways is this whole concept of storyboarding. If you haven't looked up storyboarding, I would highly recommend you to do that. This is just a quick example. I've actually linked to their website. This is where a school district, I think it was Virginia Beach City, some time ago, 2015-ish, wanted to build their concept for where they wanted their school district and their kids to go and their community. And they built a website, and it's just a fascinating looking website, and showing you the process of how they did it. Well, this is an example of the storyboarding of how they want their kids to start and end, and what they want the process to look like. storyboarding is a great way not just to build films and media, it's also a great way to build a story, to see the process of history. You could do a storyboarding with, essentially Dan Meyer's math is Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. That's part of the process of story. So there's a bunch of different things. It isn't stuck to a particular piece of content. I already brought up sketchnoting. This is Nicole Carter's book about how to get kids to understand the process of sketchnoting. You're actually using two sides of the brain with both that tactile piece with the structure of numbers and letters, but then you're also getting to use pictures, which we know the brain processes pictures much faster. Highly recommend that book, although there's a bunch of other resources out there. I've brought up the whole using your phones, but you can use this with iPads, you can use Chromebooks, all kinds of things. TikTok, not so much, but certainly with Flipgrid. Flipgrid's a tool to be able to give audio video feedback. You can leave things over time. If you want to get a bunch of formative assessments and have kids get that to you, you can easily do that with Flipgrid. And then, as I brought up, this is a little bit more difficult, but the kids are now on TikTok and Snapchat. How can you find ways to do that? For those of you who don't know what TikTok is, it's essentially ability for people to make short little videos. And I'm sure you've seen all over the internet, people are stuck at home, so they're making these interesting dance videos and all those things. How can you take that and flip that to get them to show you what they've learned or process some things? And then last but not least, this is certainly a huge phenomenon with adults, is podcasting has really blown up. And so can you find ways for kids to leave, audio journals or some kind of, maybe host a show with some of their, students? Again, that for some people will scare folks. It's not quite inside the lines, allows them to get outside the lines. But if you set up the structures and the norms of what's acceptable and what's not, you'll be surprised at what amazing things kids do. Again, with that, and it forces a process of testing from the back. Last but not least, as we close this out, and I appreciate you hanging with me, and I hope I gave you a bunch of resources. I can't leave without talking about this particular thing. The second wave of my career here has been a real focus on media literacy, and the fact that it's very difficult to decipher the difference between fact and fiction as adults. And I am really concerned, if adults can't do it, how are kids able to do it? And so my co-author, Jennifer Lagarde, who many of you know from, she was in North Carolina for a long time, her and I wrote a book, and it's done really, really well. We're actually working on book 2, which is a bunch of activities. This is meant to give you strategies and resources for you to use with your kids, probably even use with your family. And then just to add to this, I'm going to do, I think, a couple sessions in the coming weeks around this particular book or new things that I've learned since then. And I would encourage you to maybe join me. It should be interesting for you. Last but not least, as I told you, the name of my company is Think, Do, Thrive. It is a struggle right now. Things are difficult. We're all trying to figure it out. We're all hopefully giving each other a bunch of compassion and grace through the process. But we have the ability, and we are made to thrive. If anything we know about human history is we've found all kinds of different ways to do that, both good and bad. But I like to sit on the half full side of things, and I'm just excited to see what you will do. I hope that you will keep in touch and let me know if any of these strategies work for you. I know you're going to be given an evaluation here from Nancy, and I hope you'll be able to give me some feedback on some of the things you liked or some of the things you could use in the future. And I just really appreciate this opportunity, and hopefully I'll get to meet you face to face sometime.
Yes, thank you, Darren, so much. I put a link to the evaluation And somebody's asking for, oh, I know, an opportunity to discuss. So maybe one of the ideas for discussion, Bonnie said, oh, it would be awesome to be able to like get back together or share emails. The Friday Institute does have on Wednesdays, which is today at 2:00 for teachers, the FI Connects, which is a great opportunity to continue discussions. And so I can grab that link really quickly too, if you want to jump over there, or at least maybe for another day. But that is, I know we're always trying to figure out ways that we can continue to talk and learn and share together. And so Bonnie, I appreciate that, that idea. Here's the FI Connects. If you don't know about this, this is, I think, today I think is elementary educators, but there's always maybe some great tips. But really, the FI Connects is much more of a conversation, a few ideas and a conversation. Next week will be secondary. So next week at 2 is the secondary educators. So that's the FI Connects, which is next week. I will put the link again to today's evaluation in there, as well as today's, I've been sharing the links to the resources, and it's been wonderful to be with you all. I hope you continue to have a good week and stay healthy and stay safe, and we appreciate everything you're doing for your teacher for your students. We appreciate you, teachers. So thank you for all you're doing for your students and for your families. It's so needed, and so this is the least we can do for you all. We'll hang around if there's any other questions, and I'm gonna put the resources in there one more time.
Thank you.
Where is the evaluation?
I just put it in there. I put that link to the evaluation in here. So,
I can't. Okay, let's see.
Yeah, see if that works.
Is the screen still showing, Nancy? It's also on the screen. I mean, it's a lot
I can't
longer
get it.
Okay, if you type in the go.ncsu. What's on the screen there, you're able to do that.
Wait a minute. It keeps kicking me back out.
And sometimes you have to click your escape key because it puts you in the big screen, like Zoom kind of locks you into that big screen if you click escape.
Okay, I did. Man, I can't get it to work.
Okay.
Can you copy it?
I tried that too.
Oh.
Are you able?
You sound like me the last week or so here. All kinds of all these things are just crazy.
My God.
Things get stuck.
If you sorry, Darren.
Are you able to get to the chat?
No, I can't. I can't get back in there either.
Okay.
Oh, I see you guys now. I do.
Okay.
You poor thing. I'm sorry you have to look at that.
Yeah, no, don't say that. Please don't say that. I can't. It won't let me click on it.
Let's see. Can you? What happens when you hit escape?
Nothing. Nothing happens.
You see your Zoom icon, the blue Zoom icon?
I can't do this. I can't do this.
It's okay. If you send us your email, we can send you the link.
Okay. How can I do that?
You see the type? Can you type in the email? Do you see the chat?
Yeah, I see the chat.
Okay, just type your email right in there.
Okay. All right. Man, I can't see. Okay.
Looks like Tammy's in here. Do you know Tammy? She's saying she will also send it to you.
Okay. You said Tammy?
Yes. All right. But I'm going to send you.
Oh, I see it in there. There you go.
Yes.
And thank y'all so much. I've got a lot of information. Thank you so much, you guys.
Well,
All
thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to be here.
I'm sending this now.
To my email address?
Yes.
Thank you.
You want to just wait one second and make sure?
Yes, ma'am. I'll wait.
Okay. Here we go.
Aurora, where are you at in North Carolina?
I'm in Fayetteville. I work at Westover Middle School.
All right.
I'm the STEM teacher over there.
There you go. So what are you having your students do with STEM as we're waiting for this?
They make stuff. It's part of the engineering course that they have, and they make cars and boats and shoes and everything like that.
So is it a setup curriculum, or did you build it?
Yes, it is. We go out of the Project Lead the Way program.
Ah, there we go. Awesome. And do your kids like it, you think?
Yeah, I think they do. I think they rather use their hands than having to sit there and use a pencil and a paper all day.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know what it's called, but I saw the other day a friend of mine made his own. They had like a flexible neon thing. And you were able to make your own neon signs because you could bend it, and it was all flexible. I was like, blew my mind. It was crazy. He was making John Coltrane pictures, like
oh wow,
EDC machine, and then he had the music playing behind the picture, and then he had woven in this neon flexible stuff that said John Coltrane on it. It was so cool, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, kids would go nuts. I don't know if they know who John Coltrane is, but they would.
He's a jazz singer.
Oh yeah, no, we know who it is. I don't know if they would know who it is.
Oh, the kids, they won't know.
Yeah.
No, they won't know that.